Okay, we're going to do a little update on Hercules, and we're going to start on the ground because we finally have some cool weather. What I want to try, which we haven't done in quite a while, is play with trot, but instead of on the lunge line, on the long reins. So Hercules has been doing really well on a big circle, on the long reins, at the walk, starting to find long and low. We finally have cool enough weather that I'm just going to walk him around for a lap. And then I brought the whip out with me, which is, it's really awkward, but for horses that don't go into trot easily, can kind of manage the long reins and the whip, and I want to start working on walk trot transitions just for about 5 or 10 minutes each way, and see if during the hot weather all of our work at the walk has sort of paid off. I've seen a big consistent change in his posture. He's doing less of that, and more often just maintaining a walk without halting so much, and lengthening his neck also without halting so much. The more he was lengthening his neck at first, the slower he would go, which is very normal, very typical. And so it's hard to get through that transition from sort of the posture of extension to the posture of long and low with a horse that really doesn't have a lot of forward to begin with. It's much easier when they have lots of forward to work them on the long reins. So I'm just going to give him maybe one more lap, and then I'm going to pick up the whip. And the reason I like, especially for Hercules, his main issue is related to internal straightness, which is both the alignment of the spine as well as rotational movement of the spine. Both spinal functions have to be stabilized in order to gain what I call internal straightness. I know we got a little distraction. It's nice and cool and breezy today. We got kids running down the road. So we're going to use this energy of our first cold front and maybe a little activity around the arena to see if we can't bump that up to trot. But already his walk, he's much lighter on the long reins than he's been. He wants to lengthen his neck right away as we start working on our circle. So that's the improvement we made slogging away on this exercise over the hotter months. So now I'm just going to pick up my whip so that I can manage the long reins. And because Hercules' main issue is straightness, if I can start to get a little bit of trot going on the long reins instead of just the lunge line, it will help him balance in the trot much better than just leaving him to figure it out and maybe go crooked again on the lunge line. So all I want is for him to go into trot when I lift the whip. Whatever trot he gives me, I'm going to just use the long reins the same way I do at the walk, trying to level the back, level the rib cage, level the pelvis. Trot. And he's a bit more forward than he used to be. So I'm expecting now he can trot on the long reins, where before I would go to the lunge line because any trot was just too much for Hercules. He just would kind of shuffle and not trot. So we played a little bit with trot and even canter transitions on the lunge line, where he could figure out how he wanted to organize himself in order to go forward. And then a lot of time walking on the long reins to help him alter his skeletal coordination. And as his coordination gets better, and I see him change posture more frequently, then I know we kind of have a chance of maybe building up a more balanced trot using the support of the long reins, but you can see it's really awkward to have to use a whip and the long reins. I really hate doing it. Trot. But I'm not going to get a trot without the whip. And like I'm not making him hold the trot. Even if I only get a few little shuffly strides, the transitions are really the gold nuggets for balance. So every time he has to push a little more to get from walk to trot, we build up that pushing strength. And every time he decides to break trot and come back to walk, we build up more engagement and more breaking strength. So we're just going to play with it. Trot, walk. Really? Are you going to make me chase you? Come on. Thank you. So you can see I get a pretty minimal response from a lot of effort. So I'm going to have to go a little closer because he realizes I'm too far away to touch him with the whip. So I'm not going to go too close. I'm going to go a little closer and walk with him. Good. So I always let him break the trot, give him a little bit of time at the walk to restabilize, and then ask for the trot again. And the more frequently I ask for trot, the more he's going to understand that as he gets comfortable in the trot, it would be a whole lot more energy efficient to hold the trot longer rather than make a million transitions. But as long as he's uncomfortable in the trot and struggling with his coordination, he's going to keep giving me a few strides and breaking. So I'm going to go a little closer again because that seems to sort of work with him, me not having to slap the whip so many times. But it's a pretty small circle for trot work, so I'm going to walk with him and just keep doing the same thing. Let him walk a little bit, trot a little bit. Walk a little bit, trot a little bit. Trot. Okay, so all I do is the more I want to work on trot, I still allow the downward transition, but my timing on the upward transition just comes a little sooner, until pretty soon we work our way down to just a stride or two of the walk and then back to trot. And once we're getting more frequent upward transitions, that's when he's going to be a little more motivated to seek his comfort, because the upward and downward transitions are the hardest part of the work, which is why they're the best part for the balance, but they certainly cost a lot more energy. Yeah, so his trot is not as forward on the long reins as it is on the lunge line, but that's because he has to stay straighter and more level, which means he has to use his back and hindquarters a little more correctly on the long reins than he does on the lunge line. So all horses on the long reins will lose a little bit of forward, but we're just going to play with it. Good boy. Trot. And we're going to see if transition by transition, if he starts to hold the trot a little longer, like just there, then he's working on it. He's starting to seek a little bit more efficiency in motion. and keeping him on the circle with the long reins, because you can see he really falls forward at the trot. He gets quite heavy on the forehand and really shuffly. So working him with the long reins on a circle is how I can support the hindquarter engagement as we go between walk, trot, walk, trot, walk, trot about 10,000 times before he gets better at it. Yeah, I think we just made almost a full circle. That was pretty good. So again, I'm going to let him rebalance at the walk, just a couple strides, and back to trot. And trot. Yeah, so this is a good, I'm glad we're videoing this today. This is the first trot work we've been able to do in a few months, because the summer is not the best time for trot work. Well, certain months of the summer. They're just too stinking hot, and they get tired before they get efficient, or they overheat before they kind of get better at it. But in the winter, with our first cold front, we can do a whole lot more trotting and cantering, and I feel like he's really ready to finally start getting better at the trot. So the riding, we're going to check that out, see how he's doing. He's been doing pretty good under saddle with finding sort of more length through his back and his neck, getting straighter and straighter, and offering a little bit more consistent forward energy. So that's the other reason I want to start developing the trot on the ground while we're sort of finishing up the work on his coordination at the walk under saddle. So while we solidify the walk under saddle, we can begin a lot more trot work, or more intense trot work, on the ground. Yeah, so I think this is going to be very doable for Mr. Hercules. So instead of having to go to the lunge line, we can keep working on the straightness and the engagement and the trot by being able to pull this off on the long reins. And a big sign of progress on the long reins will be when I can get the trot without the whip, and he can just walk and trot from a little tap on his hind legs. That's telling me he's getting more comfortable with forward. Right now you can see his trot is not good. He's struggling with it. So I need the support of the whip until he gets a little bit handier at trot. And it takes a while to change the coordination. So when I say I'm working on trot for 15 or 20 minutes, it's not a solid trot. And if the horse gets a little, breathing a little heavy, or looks like they need a break, I can put in a few minutes of walk and then keep working on walk, trot transitions. And the way I like to do this is, it's my job to ask for the upward transition, and I can choose how frequently. And it's his job to choose the downward transition. And he can choose that as frequently or infrequently as he wants. Knowing that the law of inertia and the work entailed mechanically for upward and downward transitions means that as his trot gets more comfortable to him, when he finds trotting is easier, he'll hold it longer and longer without me having to chase him or force him to do that. And in the meantime, the 10,000 transitions between walk and trot allow him to restabilize whenever he loses his balance or gets uncomfortable in a bad trot. He can break to walk, kind of find his stability, regain his comfort, and then try it again. Yeah, that's pretty good. Oh, we're gonna have a poop break. There's always one of those. We'll see if we can go around without stepping in it. I think my circle's getting a bit bigger. Very good. So slightly less shuffly as we're getting near, as we're about at 15 minutes, I think. I forgot to look at my watch when we started the trot, but I'm just gonna make about a 20-minute video. We'll see where he's at. So he's a little less sort of clunky and shuffly on the front legs. He's a little easier trot to get going, more willing to go into trot, less resistance, and he's holding the trot longer. So all of those are signs that he's kind of figuring out a little more comfort in the trot as we go along. And obviously this will take him some time and some practice to get good at trot. But if we can trot on the long reins instead of just having to go to the lunge line to get trot, that will move things along a little quicker. I can support his balance. And trot. So we'll just do about 3 more minutes. And then I'll let him walk. Oops. Let him walk a little longer, I should say. You can see it's like the first 10 minutes of doing the walk, trot, you're kind of working through the old habits and the discomfort. And then after that, about the 15-minute mark, maybe he starts to get a little bit better at trot. So if he can keep working another 5 minutes, we might solidify that change that made his trot a bit better. So it's not about exhausting. When I say I work on trot for 20 or 30 minutes, it's not solid trot the whole time. And I can adjust and have more time at the walk whenever he needs it. And the point is not to exhaust him. The point is just to go walk, trot with the guidance until I feel like he's a little lighter, the trot looks a little better, he can hold it a little longer, all of those things. And he really didn't offer me too much resistance today. So he was a little hard to get going in the beginning, but now already he's holding the trot a lot longer, sooner into the session, and going forward a bit easier. And with a horse that has a lot of known issues, especially lameness issues, I much prefer working on the faster speeds on the long reins. And when you need the whip to do it, it's not the funnest thing, it's a little bit tricky, but obviously it can be done. Because once a horse has sort of a dysfunction that's made them lame, it's going to take a really long time for them to figure out something different without guidance. So the unsupported exercises, I use a little more when I just need them to find calmness, like with Rarely. But with Hercules, he's plenty calm, and he's attentive, his mind is in the game. His movement is just not easy for him. So in that case, the more support I can give to help him alter his coordination, the happier he's going to be. And the lunge line was necessary just to kind of get him to play with trot, and canter. But I don't want to do too much of it because he would eventually resort to his old dysfunctional habits because he doesn't know anything different. Those are pretty ingrained in him. All right, one last one. Good. He said one last one. So then I'm just going to let him walk. And that's kind of the update on Hercules for today.